Unter Palmen.
Hello.
Hallo. Guten Morgen oder guten Tag. Besser. Please, Gary Wassner.
They told me to wait.
A warm welcome. Oh, they told you to wait.
Yes.
Well, this is now, women nowadays needs a stage, at least for a minute to be, you know.
Go for
Yeah.
it. It's all yours.
No, but I'm very happy that you're joining me here because Gary Wassner is an amazing man. There are still amazing men in this world.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. No, from many perspectives, actually. And I just came from, we had an interesting conversation because McKinsey and Business of Fashion, they're doing an interesting study every year about the state of fashion. And so that was quite inspiring. And I'm happy now to be here with you because we want to talk about the changes, the disruptions, and what fashion can do, how they have to react. But let me introduce for a minute. Gary is, to make it easy, the most famous startup supporter, investor you can imagine. He is quite unique. His company is quite unique because what I like so much about talking is it's not about money in first terms. You are much more interested in products. So please, Gary, let us start. Tell us what you're really doing. Not only choosing companies who definitely need money, so if you want to come in conversation later, but please let us, take us to this business you're doing. You're getting up in the morning and then you think, where's a nice product, or how do we?
Well, at this point, I think just about every American designer and
Is it loud enough?
Can you hear?
Can you hear? Okay.
Many European designers seek us out, seek me out and my company. They come to us with product, they come to us with an idea, and they want to know if we can help them, and not just help them financially, help them with their sources of distribution, channels of distribution, help them with funding, help them structure their businesses appropriately for today's world. So I see just about every single designer who hits the scene in New York.
We have a strong discussion, all these words, disruption, digital, change, fast, all the code words. How you're in this business quite a while. Are these really the key issues we should talk about, or are we beyond that already?
I think we're beyond it, but interesting, the more things change, the more they remain the same. Yes, disruption is a popular word. It's really more about reevaluation than it is about disruption. For many years, we had an industry in the US and globally that was governed by a number of individuals, what I call our gatekeepers in fashion, the editors, the retailers. There were no options, no alternatives. Now the gatekeepers are gone. You can reach the consumer yourself. You can tell your own story. So when we talk about disruption, that's the main disruption.
So do you think the disruption is more in discussion because the gatekeepers are annoyed because they are still in front of this door, but it doesn't matter if they say you can go through or not?
Correct.
Is it a bit that we are, it's not like self-fulfilling prophecy, but from my point of view, the fashion world was always very self-reflective. The journalist business is kind of the same. We are very much looking what the others are doing and not so much what is the customer or the reader or the user is waiting. And that's why we have a lot of discussions. And as we have the power of media, there is a lot of discussion about this topic. And it was the same with the fashion world. And do you think it's beyond that, a lot of things change already? So if you follow discussions, you think everything is difficult, negative. Or is it the opposite? Is it a chance we are now in?
I look at it as opportunity, and I think most of the brands I work with see it as opportunity. Mature brands who have not changed, who have not evolved, who have not recognized that they need to discuss all channels of distribution, all opportunities, they're suffering. heritage brands that have not evolved at all, either in design or recognizing that their consumers aging out and they need to figure out how to reinvent their product category, make themselves relevant again. That's difficult. But for young brands, there's more opportunity than ever.
Because they don't need these huge marketing budgets anymore?
They don't need the marketing budget. They don't need Vogue and Elle and all the magazines to put them on the cover or to put them in their editorial. Nobody's reading these magazines. They're almost gone. They can go direct to the consumer on Instagram and on any other platform, and they can tell their story and they can show their product.
But don't they need perhaps both? Maybe they need both, the magazines and the platform, and then their own side. It's not either or.
I don't think they need both anymore. Sure, it doesn't hurt to have Vogue feature you on a cover, but the amount of consumers they're reaching are not as great as they were before. Also, I don't think the millennial takes the cover of Vogue seriously. The September issue is like, they don't even look at it. Millennials think differently. Gen Z thinks completely differently.
You're having a lot of companies kind of in stock you're supporting. How do you choose them? How does it start?
Okay. They'll come to my office, or I'll go to a show during Fashion Week. I attend about 80 shows during Fashion Week. I'll see something that looks great, meet the designer, see what their infrastructure is. Many of them don't have an infrastructure. They'll come up to the office. We'll look at product first and pricing, making sure that they've built in the proper margin to do a wholesale business and a direct-to-consumer business. Because if you start just direct-to-consumer and you price based upon that, it's very difficult to transition to a wholesale model. And my encouragement is always price for all options of distribution. So I look at gross margin, I look at how they've structured their business. Is it old school? Is it an atelier and product development and develop 150 pieces and drop 75 of them and spend all this money on product development? Is it all about marketing? Where are they putting their money? I'll look at a cash flow, a budget.
And how do you decide, what are the criteria that you decide to go with them?
Well, first of all, I want to see who's already buying the product. We work with every retailer in the world. Where currently we supply Neiman Marcus and Net-a-Porter and Matches and Barney's and Nordstrom with hundreds and hundreds of brands. So when I look at the retail landscape today, if certain stores have real credibility. They don't buy brands that don't have talent. And then there are smaller retail stores in the US that are real fashion stores. I'm sure you have them here as well, where if they're buying a brand, there's something special about it. If I see that retailer on their client list, it's purchased the brand, it gives them credibility in my mind, and I will call those retailers and say, how did it perform? So we'll do our research, but it's based upon product, based upon infrastructure, how they structure themselves, and really based upon the individuals. Probably that ranks at the top, the individuals who own the company and run the company.
You have these products, especially because we talk about these huge stores in New York or so, and I always find it quite strange, to be honest. Then you have sale, and you go to Bergdorf Goodman, and before it was elegant and luxury brands and presentation and silk paper, and then you have these huge rags, just clothes, and it's like nothing. It's like it's not even second hand, and it's always so obvious that product need a stage or a performance, because it says Armani and Prada and whatever, and it has no magic anymore.
No character.
What do you think about that?
Character. I find it really depressing. I look for stores that are doing innovative things. I think for years and years and years, American retailers and global retailers had a monopoly on the consumer. You had no place else to shop, so where did you go? You went to department stores. So people were accustomed to waiting online 20 minutes, you'd wait in line to check out. You'd go to return an item, it could take you an hour and a half on that with miserable people not treating you nicely. So they had a monopoly for a long, long time. They no longer have that monopoly, so they were very late to the game of change. And that's why we see so many problems in American retail, brick and mortar. But now they are changing. They're recognizing that, again, the consumer, the millennial, the Gen Z, they want an experience. They want it to be meaningful to them as in their lives. They want enjoyment, they want to be treated well, and they want efficiency in getting there, getting what they want, and getting out. Time is precious.
But time is good if you entertain them, because people still spend a lot of time and just hanging around. Either they do it on the smartphone, but they also like to go shopping.
Yes, but the shopping experience has to be an interesting one and not a tedious, miserable one. When you go into Selfridges, it's fun.
But if we talk about sustainability, which is one of these key words, is this an issue you promote a lot now? Did you see with the people coming to you that they come in? Is it something kind of natural? Because on the other hand, we are talking a lot about tech materials. Is this an opposite? Are they fighting? What is it?
No, there's no argument about it. I think sustainability is on everybody's tongue in the US. And mainly it's consumer driven. The consumer is very interested in it. They want to know that the brand's authentic, that they're doing something. And again, younger consumers have a very different perspective on what they want to buy and what it means to them. They're not brand driven and they're not brand loyal. So it's the luxury consumer who is still relatively brand loyal, but the millennial and the Gen Z, it's not about brand. It's about what does it do for me? What does it do for the world and the environment? So sustainability is top priority for brands.
I wonder if it's a trend word or if it's something that's long-lasting.
I think it's long-lasting. My sense is that it's ingrained in the way they've grown up today. Understanding what's happening with climate change, understanding what's happening with labor laws and with the way we produce product globally. Fast fashion was so important for such a long time, and now it's starting to struggle. We're seeing cracks in the fast fashion empires, mainly because people are not interested in product that destroys the environment.
Do you think, if it comes to this moment where you really have to buy it, is it still there? Of course, if you talk to people, everybody is for environment and everything. But there was an interesting test here in Germany. There is a company doing very well underwear, and it's about 30 euros if you buy it, but you can wear it for the next 300 years, the T-shirt. And they made a test, kind of. They said, you as a customer can decide how much you want to pay. And so they were educating or talking to the customer saying, okay, our T-shirt costs that and that because we're producing in Germany, it's sustainable, blah, blah, blah. At the end, when they had to pay, mainly men, by the way, said, okay, I'm paying in euro instead of the worst. And this is what I wonder, do you think it's a discussion or is it really a movement that we go towards at the end? If the customer at the end who's at the cashier
educating the consumer is much easier today than it ever was because, again, as I said, brands speak directly to the consumer. So if it catches their eye on Instagram and if there's a story there that makes sense to them, that they relate to, if they can buy fashion that is also helping the world and helping their lives, it's real. It's real.
You're having a lot of lectures. Gary has a very interesting background, but I loved so much is actually you have a doctor in philosophy and
Masters,
which is almost the same. Don't want to, but the approach is different, and you were writing children books, which is really just lovely, and it's so far away of this fashion business industry pushing things. How did you enter this world?
Well, to make a long story short, because you don't want to.
Well, we have another day.
I was getting my doctorate in philosophy, and I was drawn back to New York for family reasons. My father wasn't well, and I went to work in a real estate management and small finance company that my family owned. And I was miserable. My wife and I were married a couple of years, and we just moved back to New York. We had a child.
The wife?
My wife. And I was absolutely miserable. It was the most uncreative business I'd ever been in. And coming from academics and from teaching, and particularly philosophy, which is a totally impractical field, it was a shock. And coincidentally, one day in New York, I met a designer named Betsy Johnson. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Betsy. Betsy was just starting a brand. She was married to the lead singer of the Velvet Underground, the lead guitarist of the Velvet Underground, a group that I loved. It was New York in the 70s. It was a very strange time. Betsy and I became friends, and she said, I have about $15,000 worth of orders from stores, and I have no idea how to get this manufactured, how to ship it, how to collect it. And I said, well, maybe we can do something together. So Betsy was my first fashion designer I financed. And
that was quite different times.
very different times.
Very entrepreneurial, very easy to start, right?
Well,
No?
no, because Betsy had pink hair and piercings, and the industry was not ready for her at the time, and there was a lot of resistance. We had to find stores like Fiorucci and stores like that would understand her. She was my client for 14 years. When Betsy left, she had 40 stores of her own and was doing about $150 million. And it was an experience for me, an experience for her. But I realized that these people that banks wouldn't touch, these crazy fashion designers in New York that no banks would go near, they wouldn't finance them, they were crazy people, they didn't know how to run businesses. There was an opportunity for someone who actually got the creative side of things to help them. So first was Betsy, then was Tommy Hilfiger, Michael Kors, Willie Smith, anybody you can imagine. Everybody starts in the same place in fashion. They start with a collection, an idea, and a couple of orders. And some become Michael Kors and Tommy Hilfiger, and some go away.
Did you, by the way, ever design anything yourself? Maybe a t-shirt?
I partnered once with a designer. His name was Louis Marino. He wasn't the most talented designer in the world, but I partnered with him, and we co-designed. I can't say I designed, but I co-created a collection. And that was the closest I got to it. I had no technical skills in design, but I do teach a design class.
Yeah, this is what I find interesting, that you're teaching them, but is it more about the feelings, about the market? You spend a day, very famous, of course, schools, Harvard, Parsons, these places one want to be.
I'm better at merchandising than at design. I can look at something and know if it's going to work. I can guide someone. I speak with so many designers. I work with so many. I go to so many shows. My life is about fashion. My entire family is involved in it.
Is this why you're wearing it looks lovely, but it's not fashionable at all? It's more like we always wear these comfy suits.
It's a suit and tie, That's
it would have been so funny if you came in with a Gucci situation.
How did you know? Good eye. I forgot what I was saying.
No, I know, sorry, I was not neutralizing that.
Okay.
You don't need to be the expert in fashion to be a fashion person. If you talk so much about fashion, it's more the knowledge, and the more you know, perhaps the less fashionable.
It's an aggregation of facts and visuals. I go to so many shows, I see what's on the runway, and from the other side of it, it's not just that I see it, I'm financing these companies. So when I say financing, we do all the internal work for the companies. So we invoice the stores for their product. We see the orders. I know what the stores are buying. So I can look across the board at 400 plus brands and see what is Barney's buying? What is the trend that they're buying into? So it's an intuitive grasp also of what trend is currently and where it's going. Because on our calendar, the fashion calendar, we're a year ahead. We're designing now for next year. So developing and understanding trend, where things are going, is vital. It's vital. Fortunately, when I walk around here, I'm meeting so many people who are providing tools in the tech side to help us understand what happened in the past and predict what will happen in the future. And I think that's incredibly interesting as long as they stay out of the design room. Yeah.
Fashion was always about changing. We have to hurry in speaking, but fashion was always about changing because of new. But it's difficult for them to change, obviously, the system. But you are in this business such a long time, and maybe there are very heavy changes. But are you positive about that? Are you positive at the situation we are in, or do you think it's going to be very difficult? Because if we talk about growth and markets and...
I'm extremely optimistic. I see growth. I see it challenging for mega brands, and I don't think we're going to be building those mega brands anymore. I think the days of these huge global brands is over, at least for a while, and nothing's over forever. But I think I'm extremely optimistic because the consumer is more eclectic and they're looking for more diversity in product and more individuality in product. So where I see the most growth is in these great young brands that are in the range of 2 million in volume, $2 million in sales volume to $40 million in sales volume. And, I mean, we call those small companies compared to the mega brands. But they're the ones that are growing in huge percentages because they're novel. They're not everywhere. They're not in every post. They're not commercial. They're individual and they appeal to the individual taste of the consumer.
And the issue, as you're working in Europe and globally, kind of, on the other hand, we're in an odd time in our relationship to America. And the trade issue, the borders, this America First thing, do you think it will affect the fashion and the young brands or older brands or established brands?
I'm glad you asked this question. We really literally have two worlds in the United States now. The one that's in the media and in the White House, and the one that's in real life. It doesn't affect us at all in the fashion industry.
Okay.
We think of fashion as a global product. We think, it's a very avant-garde industry. It's a very accepting industry. We're pushing diversity both in size, in race, in religion. What goes on in Washington and in the press has no effect on the runways in New York. We've never had more diversity. We've never had more interest in being global than we do now. And I think that's probably true with the average person in the UK and what's going on in Parliament. It's like, there's a disconnect. We look at what's happening in our government and we're like, is this for real? It doesn't affect our industry. The issues that affected us were tariffs and the trade war with China and the changes in the EU. But it hasn't, in fashion, there's been no additional duties on product exchange between the US and the EU in fashion products. So it hasn't really affected us at all. Our pricing's too high for the EU right now, only because of exchange rates, nothing else. As far as China, it's had a big impact. Most American companies are looking to source elsewhere. The costs of producing in China are going up, and not only because of duties and tariffs, but because labor costs, freight costs, et cetera. So every company I work with, including the very, very large ones like The Gap, are looking to alternative sourcing outside of China. So it's had more of an impact there than it has with the EU. I don't think anybody in fashion thinks of the EU and of the UK as not part of the embraceable world of fashion. So from our perspective, absolutely no change. I finance a lot of brands in France and in England.
Are you at all interested in German fashion?
I love German fashion.
You use?
I've been here many times. And some of the most exciting retail stores I've been to, I don't know their names because they're smaller ones, I look at the brands and I love them. I love what they're doing. What I've found so interesting, and I've asked this a number of times since I've been here, is why aren't you exporting to the U.S.? I don't quite understand.
Maybe they need someone like you to tell them.
I'm happy
We're in
to
Berlin.
work with
There's a
them.
lot of creativity here, but to make a deal out of it, make a business out of it, is another chapter.
What I find is there are a number of ways to sell to a foreign market.
Yeah.
For Americans to sell to the EU and for Europeans to sell to the American market. And a lot of brands use distributors. Now, I don't know if you know what that means, but one US distributor will buy from multiple brands, sell them themselves in the US, and distribute themselves in the US. So the brand doesn't really know what's going on. They don't know the client list, et cetera, et cetera. And I find that the German designers tend to prefer that than to try to come to the US on their own. Whereas the French like a presence in New York, they want to show in New York, they want to deal with the retailers directly, and the British as well. But the Germans tend to want
We're becoming more the cars.
to be one step removed and have a distributor who takes care of all of it. So that's why I don't see that many brands. I do finance the distributors. So in a secondary way, I'm financing probably about 15
Maybe they
or
don't feel
20.
so welcomed.
I don't
Maybe
know.
because the American idea of Germany is cars and
I don't think that's the case. We always have a sense that German fashion is avant-garde fashion. And within the industry, we think of it that way. I think there's a tremendous opportunity for German styling to come to the US. We think of it as Jill Sander, as minimalist, as very clean, as almost like a Calvin Klein aesthetic pre-Raf Simons. You know, and it's a very positive, Helmut Lang. I mean, it's a very positive impression of German fashion, but we don't see it.
Okay, I mean, this is a good word to end, so go over there, right? Thank you very much,
Yes.
Gary, for your time. That was very
You're
interesting.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much, Gary.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Inga.